Hey guys, it's Protendo, and with Animal Crossing New Horizons confirmed to be done with major updates, for the first time since the game's release, we have the future of the series to look forward to. It feels a little strange to be back in the same position I was in after the release of New Leaf's Welcome Amiibo update since I spent so much time anticipating the release of Animal Crossing 5. But now it's here, and it's complete. And while I'm fully aware that the next mainline Animal Crossing game is likely quite a ways away, what I'm really interested in is what the series can do between now and then. If you've seen my video on what I think is next for the Animal Crossing series, you know that I'm fairly confident we'll see another Animal Crossing release on the Switch. Thanks to New Horizons' success, the console has a larger Animal Crossing audience than any of Nintendo's past systems, and it would make perfect sense to release a new game for the near 40 million fans who would love to eat it up. Not Animal Crossing 6, mind you, but maybe a new spin-off or potentially a port, remaster, or remake. And as you can tell by the title and thumbnail, the latter is what I want to touch on today. Is it actually possible that we could see an Animal Crossing port on the Switch, and if we did, which Animal Crossing game would it make the most sense to bring over? Talking about Animal Crossing ports does feel pretty weird since the series has never actually gotten any ports, let alone a port to a system that already has its own mainline Animal Crossing game. One could argue that the closest thing the franchise has gotten to a port is Animal Crossing City Folk on the Wii, since it's a very similar game to its predecessor, Wild World. But the games are still considered different entries in the series and have a lot of key differences, despite the similarities. So, unless you count Animal Forest being converted into the original Animal Crossing, the concept of porting an Animal Crossing game is still completely foreign. But I think this would be the best possible time to change that. Like I said, there's of course the monetary incentive of releasing a game for 37 million hungry fans, but for Nintendo, there's also a convenience factor. This entire video was sparked by me thinking of how strange it was that Nintendo went through the effort of making a new model for every single special character in New Horizons 2.0 update, despite the fact that most of them don't have actual roles in the game. Sure, they're useful in Happy Home Paradise and did a lot to appease fans, myself included, but it would be a real shame to have all these assets available and just never use them again. If Nintendo ever wanted a remake, remaster, or port of an old Animal Crossing game, now would be the time. They have both the incentive and resources to do so. And now we get to move on to the more interesting question. Which Animal Crossing game would Nintendo port to the Switch? First things first, before people bring it up, I'm ruling out the possibility of Nintendo bringing previous Animal Crossing spin-offs to the Switch, mainly because none of them make much sense to me. Happy Home Designer was made irrelevant by the release of Happy Home Paradise, Amiibo Festival was terribly received and is probably one of the most hated Nintendo games in recent memory, and Pocket Camp was designed for mobile and is doing just fine there. I can't see why Nintendo would feel compelled to bring any of these to the Switch. With that out of the way, we can move on to talking about why Nintendo will most certainly not port Animal Crossing New Leaf to the system. It pains me to say this, but New Leaf is easily the least likely Animal Crossing game to get brought over. The most unlikely candidate of an unlikely concept. But let's look at the positives first. New Leaf is definitely the most popular of the first 4 Animal Crossing games. Many fans consider it to be the best of the series, myself included. From that point of view, it would probably make the most sense to bring it over, since it would likely sell the most out of any of the previous Animal Crossing games. But there lies the problem. Animal Crossing New Leaf is almost too good? I know, Mika, can't you let your New Leaf superiority propaganda rest for a second? I'm sorry. But from a business point of view, I don't think it makes much sense to release an Animal Crossing game as good as New Leaf on the same system as New Horizons. And that's not a diss on New Horizons or anything. I think the game was heavily improved by the 2.0 update. But there are a couple things that New Leaf sort of just objectively does better. Online play, for instance, that's a big one. Multiplayer is a major selling point for New Horizons, and yet you can't really do anything with your friends? New Leaf, on the other hand, has an entire island dedicated to playing a variety of minigames with other players. And man, there's all sorts of different tropical fruit on that island, and the nighttime music is so cozy and immersive and... Okay, sort of getting caught in a New Leaf praise cycle, sorry. I'll save that for the review. Point being, Animal Crossing New Horizons is still selling insanely well, and for Nintendo to release another Animal Crossing game on the Switch, they'd have to ensure that cannibalization doesn't occur. Someone seeing New Horizons on the shelf and picking up New Leaf instead wouldn't be what they want. A New Horizons player being interested in an older game in the series and picking it up is. So, yeah, as much as I'd adore a New Leaf with New Horizons visuals, I don't think it's gonna happen. And I'm sure this is gonna bum people out too, but I've also gotta rule out Wild World. It's easily the Animal Crossing game that's the roughest around the edges from a visual standpoint, so a remake would be incredible. But I just can't see Nintendo bothering when City Folk exists. Why put a bunch of effort into fully recreating a DS game when you can touch up a very similar Wii game instead? And so, that leaves us with two. Animal Crossing City Folk for the Wii, and Animal Crossing GameCube, also often referred to as population growing. I could see either of these working for different reasons. If Nintendo wanted to bring City Folk over, they'd definitely pull a Skyward Sword HD. Update the textures and lighting without altering the actual look of the game all too much. And being a remaster, the game seemingly wouldn't affect New Horizons sales all too badly. It would definitely be a visual downgrade, that's for sure. But then there's population growing. And to me, if Nintendo had to bring another Animal Crossing game to the Switch, this would be their choice. I don't think this would be a remaster, but instead a full-on remake with New Horizons assets. The music would even be re-recorded, but the core of the game would remain unchanged. It's the exact kind of game I can easily see coexisting with New Horizons on the same system because they have such different appeals. One is the brand new designer's paradise with a massive player base, the other is the comparatively niche town life simulator. It seems like such a Nintendo move to me, using the game's immersion as a main selling point but also highlighting the lack of its designing, ensuring that consumers know that it's not a replacement for New Horizons and they should have both. And plus, remaking the first game in the series just feels right to me, as much as I would prefer a New Leaf remaster or remake for selfish reasons. I can practically see the box for the game. Animal Crossing Forest Life. Revisit the first Animal Crossing game like you've never seen it before. In my opinion, it's definitely the most feasible of all the options. And I would be happy to pick it up, even if they do end up censoring Rossetti. He used to be so mad. Anyways guys, that's about it for this video. As always, I'd love to hear what you think. Could Nintendo end up bringing another Animal Crossing game to the Switch? And which game would be the most likely for them to re-release? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Animal Crossing content. I'll see you all later. Protendo out.